Hello to all my dear followers. I want to welcome you to a new chapter of the fanfic What If Naruto Mastered All of Minato's Jutsus. Always remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you want the next chapter. Without further ado, enjoy.
It had been 6 years since our hero had started the academy and made his friends. Now sitting at 5 feet 4 at 12, he could proudly say that he trusted all 3 of his friends for life. Today was the day of the final exam before the life of a genin. Needless to say, Naruto was beyond excited. During the years at the academy, Naruto had kept himself on an average position in the class. Enough not to draw any unwanted attention to himself. Over the years, thanks to the use of shadow clones, he had grown massively in all of his shinobi branches. He was now a level 6 Fuinjutsu user and had started dissecting both of his father's signature seals. The Hiraishin and the space-time absorption barrier. His taijutsu and speed were mid-chunin level thanks to his use of weights and then resistance seals after he reached level 5. He had also finally matured his Sharingan completely. Naruto, however, wasn't overly dependent on the eyes. He used them only to cast and break genjutsus, or to copy new jutsus that his Jiji was going to teach him. He had also massively improved his ninjutsu, which now stood at an impressive high chunin level. He still hadn't done any elemental manipulation but was very skilled with non-elemental jutsus. Even creating some personal versions of jutsus that he knew. He had also improved his summoning and could now summon at least one battle toad. He had also gained good control over his chains. However, the highlight for him would be his mastery of the Rasengan. It made him happy and feel close to his old man after learning his signature technique. As he was excitedly waiting for the exams to begin elsewhere in the fire capital, a nervous Kushina was packing her things to return to Konoha. The reason to her nervousness will soon be revealed. Multiple flashback no jutsu. Kushina walked through what was left of the village gates at the crack of dawn toward the carriage that would take her and her new family to the capital with her newborn daughters in hand. As she was about to enter the carriage, she looked back and saw Hiruzen standing at the dislodged entryway to the village with a sleeping Naruto in his arms. The sickening disgust she saw in his eyes as he glared at her before he turned his back to her and walked towards the Hokage tower hurt her immensely. He was the man that Minato respected above all others, and to see him regarding her with such awful disappointment, she could only hope that he would see the truth behind her words one day. She forgot her pain as she gazed longingly upon the 2 red-headed infant girls that were fast asleep in her arms, neither of them having a care in the world. She smiled lovingly at them, thankful that despite last night's horrific attack by the Kyuubi, or whatever tragedy might befall her, her family, her village, or even her nation, there was still so much purity and innocence in the world. That purity and innocence had to be guarded and preserved for as long as possible. They would be free from worry for now, at least, as despite Hiruzen's anger with her, he still cared enough to provide an ANBU detail to escort her and her babies to the capital. The trip took 2 full days at the slow pace the carriage moved at. During that time, the ANBU hadn't spoken with her, and neither had she bothered to speak with any of them, guessing that they likely felt the same way about her that Hiruzen did. She couldn't fault them for that, they didn't know any better, after all. When they had arrived at the capital and they had stopped at the courtyard of the daimyo's palace, she thanked her escorts, who merely disappeared without so much as a word of acknowledgement, and exited the carriage. To her surprise, the daimyo himself was there to greet her and welcome her personally. Feeling honored by the daimyo's personal greeting, she thanked her feudal lord and allowed him to lead her to the Uzumaki estate grounds within the capital proper. There was still quite an impressive staff of caretakers tending the grounds and the house, many of whom Kushina had even known as a young girl, and all of whom greeted her and welcomed her home warmly. All of them gushed over the 2 baby girls in her arms, commenting on how beautiful they were and expressing their sentiments over how proud Kushina must be of them. She entered the main house, put the girls down into the double crib that had been prepared for them, and went to settle down in the living room. She allowed herself a smile, despite her sadness at both Minato's passing and Hiruzen's disappointment. All that mattered at the moment was that she and her girls were home, safe and sound, and they would have a happy life and childhood, here. The twins' first birthday came and went much more quickly than Kushina could have thought possible. Kushina had met the day with mixed feelings. The day would forever be bittersweet to her, and while she would remember the loss of her dearly departed husband and the death of her son by Kyubi's possession, she was also very happy to celebrate the beginning of the girl's second year of life. She and the girls were very content and comfortable with the luxurious, safe and peaceful life that they were able to enjoy in the fire capital. She had written to Hiruzen, giving him the annual report she promised she would give to him every year detailing her health and the health of the girls, and when she began training them, she would let him know how that was progressing, too. The letter she wrote to him was forgettable for the most part, though she did ask whether he had dealt with the demon and avenged Minato's death yet, or whether he would want her to do it herself. She had been surprised when, the very next day, she answered a knock on her front door and opened it to a courier ninja. The courier had an official certified letter addressed from the Hokage to her, a letter that she had to sign for. Whatever this was, Hiruzen was sending it to her as the Hokage, not as an old family friend, and he wanted a guarantee that she received it. Signing for the letter and dismissing the courier ninja, she closed her door, took the letter to her kitchen table and unsealed it. As she opened the scroll and read its contents, unlike the letter she sent to Hiruzen, his words would forever burn themselves verbatim into her psyche. Uzumaki-san. While it gives me great relief to know that you and your daughters are well, and that you are enjoying the protection of the daimyo, the guardian ninja 12 and the samurai forces of the land of fire, your request to murder your innocent one-year-old son is not well received at all. As I informed you last year, your intent towards your son was seen even by your husband in his final few minutes of life, and he took steps to protect young Naruto from you. You dishonor Minato with your evil, twisted desire to harm an innocent, your own son, no less. He must be rolling in his grave with disgust and fury at how far you've fallen, and I have no doubts at all that he would spit in your face if he were to see you now. I myself am thoroughly ashamed and disgusted that I once thought of you as a daughter, no longer. From this day forward, you are my subordinate, and I am your Hokage, nothing more. As Hokage, I hereby prohibit you from returning to Konoha no Sato before your son and daughter's anticipated date of graduation from the Shinobi Academy. Exceptions to this executive order will be as follows. 1. If I summon you back, you are to answer my summons and come to Konoha immediately, where you will be escorted directly to my office upon your arrival at the gates. At no time during your visit will you be permitted to walk the village grounds without an escort. At the conclusion of the business for which I summon you, you will immediately be escorted back to the gates and sent on your way, once again prohibited from village entry. 2. If you send me advance notice via official communication of your intention to come to the village, and the date you expect to arrive, you may come to Konoha's gates, but you will be detained at the guard station until an AMBU can escort you to my office so that you can conduct whatever business you will need to conduct with me before once again being escorted back to the gates and sent on your way, once more being prohibited entry without either an official summons from me or advance notice of your arrival. Should you be found approaching Konoha's gates or within Konoha's walls without having met the conditions of either of these exceptions, I will have no choice but to assume that you have come to either harm young Naruto or end his life, and I will have you executed on sight for charges of treason against Konoha no Sato and conspiracy to commit murder of the Namikaze clan heir. After your execution, your daughters will be brought back to Konoha no Sato to be placed in an orphanage while allowing them to be raised and trained to be shinobi of Konoha. Also, be forewarned, Uzumaki-san, any attempts by you to harm or murder Minato's son through indirect methods, such as assassination, will also result in your execution and the remanding of your daughters to Konoha's orphanage system. As is standard protocol, this executive order has been officially stamped with the seal of the Hokage and submitted to the daimyo for his records and perusal. Ordered by Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage, Konoha no Sato. Kushina was stunned beyond belief at what she had just been sent. To think that the professor that was always so kind to her had written such cold-hearted words shocked her. What was worse, he had not only written this as a letter to inform her that she was no longer considered a friend to him, but also as an executive order from the Hokage that had to be obeyed or she would suffer legal, and perhaps corporal ramifications. He had even used her last name instead of her first name to address her in the letter. She knew that the grounds for which he stated her punishment being immediate execution were clearly plausible. Bijou Chakra or no, the demon that fit Naruto's description was classified as a Jinchuriki under the letter of the law, and to top it off, he was also the legal heir to the Namikaze clan, and even she couldn't legally defend herself against charges of treason and conspiracy against a clan heir. Despite the righteousness of her feelings and the justice of her path, her hands were tied, and as much as she hated that demon wearing her son's skin, she loved her daughters that much more. She gritted her teeth in anguish, a few tears escaping her eyes before she was able to force them back down. She penned a response back, stating her intention to visit Konoha tomorrow to speak with him directly. Once completed, she informed the nearest maid that she had business in the capital, and asked her to tend to her daughters until her return. It was 3 hours later that she received an official acknowledgement from Hiruzen via Messenger Hawk stating that the gate guards would be expecting her arrival tomorrow and that she would be provided an escort to his office. She left for Konoha early the next morning, once more leaving her children in the care of the Uzumaki staff, taking to the trees to travel quickly and arriving in 3 hours. As told, she was detained at the gate to wait for an ANBU to escort her to the Hokage's office. It was a male, hawk-masked ANBU that arrived to escort her to the Hokage, taking her to him via Shunshin. Even the tone of his letter hadn't prepared her for the cold fury and near hatred that Hiruzen was now bearing down upon her. The meeting was quick, and the point driven home that she would receive no special favors of any kind from the Hokage due to feelings of past kinship. He had told her, in no uncertain terms, that while he couldn't officially declare her an enemy of Konoha, he now personally regarded her as one. She was escorted back to the gates and left the village very unsatisfied. A week later found Jiraiya at her door. Having been stricken from the Toad contract, he now had to manage his spy network directly by traveling and meeting with contacts himself. He had left Konoha to do this, and had informed Kushina that a visit to her and the girls would be a pleasant stop along the way. Of course, he needed to travel around the world and do his research, which he also informed her of without any shame, prompting her to pummel him into the ground. It was during this visit that he noticed Kushina wasn't herself. "Kushina, what's the matter? You haven't been acting like yourself since I got here," he expressed with concern. With a sigh, Kushina answered, "Sandim-sama has forbidden me from returning to Konoha before it's time for the girls to become genin unless I'm either summoned by him or unless I have business there that I have to inform him of beforehand. She continued sadly, "He's basically ended our friendship and says that he now regards me as his enemy because of that demon." "I see," Jiraiya offered with a sigh of his own, "well, that's not something I'm about to get involved in. I know how you both feel about the situation, so I'll just leave it alone." "Thank you, Jiraiya. I really appreciate that." Coincidentally, during the third day into Jiraiya's visit, Tsunade and Shizune also came by the Uzumaki estate. Sarutobi had informed Tsunade of Kushina's relocation for the time being, so she decided to stop in for a visit to her 3 godchildren. Kushina was about to speak up about Naruto not being her godson anymore, but Jiraiya stopped her with a firm grip on her shoulder and a stern glare while he shook his head in the negative slightly. "So I've seen the girls, but where's Naruto?" Tsunade asked happily. "Well, Tsunade," Jiraiya answered, "Sensei wanted the boy to remain in the village so that he could bond with it the same way his old man did. It was Minato's dying wish." While confused at such an explanation, Tsunade chose to accept it, such as it was, and didn't bring the matter up any further. All of them simply enjoyed spending time together and bonding with Kushina's red-headed toddlers, who surprised them all by taking their first steps in their presence. Another week had passed, and Jiraiya, Tsunade and Shizune all prepared to leave, Jiraiya to his business, and Tsunade and Shizune to theirs. Jiraiya had promised Kushina he would return by the girl's 5th birthday so that he could start training them with her. "Wait a minute, Jiraiya. What about Naruto's training?" Tsunade asked innocently, not noticing the darkening of Kushina's eyes, nor the icy frown on her face. "Don't worry about that boy," Jiraiya retorted with his usual bluster, "he's got the old man to look out for him and train him. He'll be alright, he won't need me." Tsunade, once again confused as the attitude Jiraiya was taking towards Naruto which was so different from his attitude towards the girls, just nodded, but she narrowed her eyes in suspicion at him before taking Shizune and going on her way. Once she was out of sight, Jiraiya turned to Kushina, all pretense gone, "I only lied to her so that I could help you save face, Kushina. You do realize that Tsunade would cut any and all ties with you just like Sarutobi-sensei did if she were to learn the truth about your abandoning the boy, don't you? That demon isn't Naruto. He's the Kyuubi. She shouted at him in frustration. Do you really think she'd buy that? I don't, and I can tell you for a fact that she won't either. Now, I won't cover for you, again. Bear that in mind, Kushina. Kushina simply bristled in anger, but chose to say nothing. Jiraiya pulled his scroll onto his back and gave his goodbye, I'll see you in 4 years. And with that, he walked out of the Uzumaki estate, departing the capital for places known only to him. Flashback end. 12 years since that last visit by Tsunade, and 8 years since Kushina had realized her gross mistakes and wrongs, and she still angrily asked herself how she could have not only been so stupid as to jump to the conclusion that Naruto was the Kyuubi without properly inspecting his seal first, but so evil-hearted as to not want to even entertain the hope that Naruto was still alive and well. What had come over her during all that time? To this day, she still found herself wanting for an answer. She only knew that there was no excuse for it. She continued to pack up the things she would be taking to Konoha with her, completely unaware that a certain Hokage was reflecting back on those turbulent days as well. Konoha Gakure no Sato. It won't be long, now, Hiruzen Sarutobi mused to himself morbidly, Kushina will be coming back here in a few months with her daughters once their training is completed to her and Jiraiya's satisfaction. What the hell am I supposed to tell Naruto about all of this? Hiruzen had made a good many mistakes and questionable judgment calls regarding Naruto, judgment calls and mistakes over what to tell him, what not to tell him, how to handle the knowledge that he'd been keeping from Naruto for all of these years, all for his own safety and to keep him as stable as he possibly could, given the poor boy's circumstances. Thinking of Kushina made him think back to that day he gave Jiraiya the photo of baby Naruto with his seal exposed, the day which would mark the beginning of his own mistakes regarding the boy and his mother. Flashback. Hiruzen was in his office going through the usual paperwork he dealt with. It was a month before Naruto's 5th birthday, and he was still working to fit in time to celebrate it with him. His train of thought was interrupted as Jiraiya came in through the window. Sarutobi quickly looked at him and nodded, not even cracking so much as a smile. He could tell that Jiraiya was perplexed. After all, he usually smiled at seeing his former student but just couldn't bring himself to do so after his last disappointing encounter with him on the night of Naruto's birth. Of course, he knew that Jiraiya would also likely attribute it to the pressure he must be under with the work of the village. But the truth was that Hiruzen had lost almost all respect for his student and eventually came to realize that, while he had trained 3 great shinobi, they were lousy people. Of the 3 of them, Jiraiya was the only one that had continued to give Hiruzen any hope, and that hope was dashed on the night of his successor's children's births. Now, he regarded all 3 of them as nothing more than failures and disappointments. Hey old man, how's it going? Jiraiya asked jovially. I'm doing fine, Jiraiya, he responded in a near monotone, and asked, how are you? Without even bothering to look up from his paperwork, not noticing Jiraiya's grin. I'm doing great. My research is coming along well and I'm excited to train the twins after their birthday when I return to Kushina. Unfortunately, I won't make it back to the party in time and I'll miss all those beautiful noblewomen, he whined, to which Hiruzen sighed and just shook his head in resignation. Jiraiya hadn't changed at all over the years. Hey, how's the kid, what was his name? He asked with a finger on his chin. Hiruzen stopped moving his calligraphy brush at this. With an annoyed and disappointed grimace, he slowly looked up at Jiraiya and responded in quiet disbelief, seriously, Jiraiya? What was his name? Do you seriously mean to tell me that your late student's family means so little to you that you can't even remember the name of your own godson? Huh? Jiraiya responded cluelessly before retorting with indignation, what do you mean? I do care for Minato's family. I've always made sure to keep tabs on Mito and Narumi. Really, now? And if they didn't tie into your almighty prophecy, would you still care as much? Jiraiya frowned darkly and asked in a low tone, and just what is that supposed to mean, sensei? Unfazed, Hiruzen proceeded to rebuke his student, Jiraiya, your late student's family means far less to you than this prophecy does, which has given you an overwhelmingly overinflated sense of self-importance. The only reason you even remember Mito and Narumi's names is because you're convinced that they're the children of this prophecy, and I only know that because training them and their relation to the prophecy is all you ever talk about. Hiruzen then added sarcastically, Minato must be looking towards you from the afterlife with such pride, especially with how much you care for his son. What was his name? Jiraiya's dark frown left his face after that, replaced with a frown of utter shame. Before he could say anything else, Hiruzen spoke up, but to answer your question, Naruto is doing fine, although he's a very lonely boy. He hasn't been able to make any friends at all because the adults in the village keep their children away from him. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear he's okay. And I suppose he'll make friends in time. Jiraiya offered, though his shame and a sense of doubt could be heard in his tone. He takes after his father, Hiruzen told him, bringing Jiraiya's gaze right to his with a saddened expression. He's the spitting image of him, and not just in his looks. He's also inherited Minato's genius-level intellect as well. In fact, I would dare say he's an even greater genius than Minato was. If I could do so, I'd take him as a student of my own. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed in resignation. God knows it would be nice to have a student that didn't end up as a failure and an utter disappointment as a human being like the three of you did. Jiraiya's sadness became laced with hurt at Hiruzen's claim. He'd seen that look on his sensei's face before, though. Hiruzen had all but given up on his former students. Jiraiya began to look around the room looking for something to latch his sight and thoughts onto. He saw a picture of Naruto when he was a baby in Hiruzen's arms on his desk and picked it up. Naruto was in his diapers and the seal on his stomach was clearly visible. Jiraiya, now intrigued, narrowed his eyes and began to do a visual inspection of the seal in the photograph. The complexity of the seal was far beyond anything he had ever seen. Minato had outdone even the greatest of the Uzumaki seal masters by combining two such strong seals along with several minor ones perfectly, and had synchronized them to perfection. In his last moments, Minato Namikaze had indeed created his masterpiece. Hey old man, I am taking this picture. I'd like to study the seal on Naruto. Do you mind? He asked and Hiruzen nodded. Take it. I have copies. I'll put another one here, he said. Jiraiya nodded and left through the window, not even saying goodbye. Hiruzen closed his eyes and sighed once more. Only one word seemed to fit for all of the people once connected to Minato Namikaze, disappointment. And these twilight years of his life seemed to be filled with nothing but disappointment, with Naruto being the only bright spot in it. Flashback end. As much as Hiruzen hated paperwork, he was actually finding it a welcome distraction to the impending dilemma that would blow up in his face if he didn't take steps to start resolving it. Fire capital. Kushina had finished packing her bedroom, and was now sealing up her kitchen goods. Her cast-iron skillet was still as beautiful and black as the day she had first acquired it. She'd taken very good care of it and used it to cook countless meals for herself and her girls. But with that thought, she began to think of all the meals she had never cooked for her son. It was when she was preparing this particular pan for use that the horrible truth had been made known to her. Flashback. It had been a month since Kushina had thrown the twins' 5th birthday party and she had started training them. She had been trying to teach them how to unlock their chakra, and even with her guidance, the twins had just succeeded this morning. That had to be some kind of record. She was currently starting to cook dinner, having just turned on the stove, heating up her cast-iron skillet so she could make a stir-fry. It was as she was doing this that she heard Jiraiya barge in through the front door and bellow a greeting. Kushina turned off the stove and ran out of the kitchen to greet him, smiling as she saw him for the first time in almost 4 years. She tackled him in a hug as he also threw his arms around her and spun her around in a couple of circles. Oh, wow, it's good to be back here. Jiraiya exclaimed. I'm glad you're here now, Jiraiya, Kushina offered. I'm just getting dinner ready, and I'm sure you're hungry. You have no idea. Kushina called in Mito and Narumi, introducing them to their grandpa Jiraiya. Both of them managed to find a place in his heart quite easily as he got on the floor with them and played with them until dinner was ready. The meal was pleasant, with Jiraiya getting to know the 2 excitable little red-headed rascals. It was shortly after the meal was over that Kushina declared the girls' bedtime. Both of them groaned but complied, knowing better than to argue with their scary mother. Once they were in bed and asleep, Kushina began talking to Jiraiya, who was smiling fondly over his time with the girls. Once again, I've had one hell of a time trying to teach the girls. They're both a bit slow, definitely more physical than cerebral, if you get my drift. Jiraiya's smile quickly faded upon hearing this, replaced by a melancholy frown as though he'd been reminded of something painful. What's the matter? Kushina asked him, concerned. Hey Kushina, I need you to take a look at something, he answered before pulling a couple of pictures out of his pocket and handing her one of them. Kushina examined the picture she was given. It was a blown-up image of a very complex seal. She looked at it critically, not understanding what he wanted her to do. Study that seal carefully, Kushina. Jiraiya instructed, and tell me what you see. She did as she was asked, studying the seal very carefully. It took her almost half an hour to determine the full capabilities of this seal. She even had to pull out some paper and a pen so that she could take some notes to keep from missing some of the functions. It wasn't just a seal, it was a magnificent work of art. Even the seals on the girls' stomachs didn't compare to what she was looking at. It was far beyond anything she was capable of. She would dare say that no Uzumaki had ever made a seal so complex or so perfect. She had seen the Uzumaki clan's works on seals, and none of them described anything that was as complex as the seal in Jiraiya's picture. It's amazing the way the seals in this array are all synchronized, even with the two high-powered base seals. This could seal off anything the seal master wanted and it would work perfectly. I don't think I could even begin to replicate this. She exclaimed excitedly. What would you imagine the limits of that seal being? Jiraiya asked. I don't think it has any. Kushina exclaimed, looking at it, I'd imagine it could seal all 9 of the bijou into one host and still have enough power for more. So then, this is a seal you would trust without a doubt. I would trust this seal with my life. If. Kushina's voice saddened, breaking slightly, if only this seal had been used with Naruto, I'd still have my son. Kushina, Jiraiya began sadly, letting out a heavy sigh before handing her the second picture and telling her, that is Naruto's seal. Her eyes went wide in dumbfounded, fear-filled shock. What did you just say? This seal was Minato's last work, his masterpiece, Jiraiya explained, pointing to the second picture, a picture of Naruto as a baby with his seal exposed, with Hiruzen cooing at him while he appeared to be giggling happily. He put it on Naruto to seal the soul and body of the Kyuubi completely, making sure it had no chance of ever taking over his own son. I was surprised myself when I saw this picture in Sensei's office, but Minato really outdid himself with this one. Hell, he outdid every seal master I've ever heard of when he made this. She stood up in horror and took a step back only to collapse a moment later, her legs refusing to hold her up. Her eyes began to well with tears of horror, anguish and torturous remorse. How could she not have seen the complexity of the seal that night she had checked the triplets? She remembered back to the night of their birth, the ripping of the bijou from her body, and the emotional distress of Minato, knowing that he was taking his dying breaths. She hadn't even bothered to study the seals at length until she'd made it here. She didn't notice the intricacies of the seals at first glance, she had just stabilized them with her chakra as quickly as possible. No. She whispered out in utter horror, her tears beginning to fall. 5 years. 5 years where she could have had her son with her there. 5 years of precious moments and memories, thrown away. No. She whispered out again, putting her hands to her mouth. She'd never remember seeing his first steps. No, she groaned out. She'd never remember hearing his first words. No. She began to raise her voice as sobs began forcing their way up from her throat. 5 years of missed birthdays, missed presents, missed chances to tuck him into bed and kiss him goodnight. She didn't even have a clue as to how he was living, or if he was healthy and happy, or if anyone was taking care of him. No. She yelled with her eyes clenched shut, her voice completely broken as her sobs gave way to bawling. She clutched the picture of Naruto to her chest as she did this, hanging her head and almost collapsing to the floor if not for Jiraiya moving fast enough to catch her and hold her to himself while she wept uncontrollably. I'm sorry, Kushina, he offered. He simply didn't have the heart to remind her that he and Sarutobi had told her of what she was just now acknowledging, that Naruto was in fact her son, that he was alive and well, and that he'd never been possessed by the Kyuubi at any point in his brief life. Oh my God, what have I done? She wailed, my baby, my Naruto-chan. I left him alone, I abandoned him. She cried even louder, I even threatened to kill him. What have I done? Her cries became so forceful that she lost the ability to form words. Her wails and bawls were such that her body heaved up and down with each sob that forced its way out. This went on for almost half an hour before Kushina had cried herself hoarse. Jiraiya marveled at the fact that the girls had remained in their room fast asleep. Kushina must have placed silencing seals in the room so that their rest wouldn't be disturbed from any errant noises around the house. Oh God! She whispered with renewed horror, what would Minato think of me if he could see me now? What would he say to me? Kushina, Minato already knew this would happen, Jiraiya explained. Sensei told me that Minato saw how you looked at Naruto and he took steps in case what he feared to be the worst happened. Kushina sniffled, it did. I did the worst thing imaginable. I abandoned his son, my son. In a sudden burst of determination, she wiped away her tears and stood up, moving towards her door as Jiraiya watched on in confusion. Where are you going, Kushina? He asked. Without stopping, she answered, I need to send a message to Konoha by messenger hawk. I'm going to tell Sandame-sama to expect me tomorrow morning. You're gonna what? I'm bringing my baby boy home. She fired back, opening and closing the front door as she left through it. She was back a few minutes later, and Jiraiya had just waited for her return in the living room. Kushina, are you sure you know what you're doing? Jiraiya asked warningly. It doesn't matter if I do or not, I'm bringing my Naruto-chan home. I'm going to apologize for not being there and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it up to him. I won't let him stay alone anymore. As soon as I get the message, I'm leaving for Konoha. Both of them stayed up throughout the night. It was a couple of hours before dawn that a messenger hawk delivered a response from Sarutobi, stating the usual conditions. Kushina stood up and prepared to leave the house once more. I'm heading out, Jiraiya. Take care of Narumi and Mito for me. I'll be back as soon as I can. She left the house before he could say anything more, speeding her way to Konoha as fast as her legs and the treetops allowed. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon as Kushina arrived at Konoha's gates. They looked a fair sight better than they had when she came 4 years ago, and even the damage caused by the Kyuubi that night was completely repaired without any trace of it ever having been there. She checked in with the gate guards, who had indeed been expecting her arrival, though not quite so early, and waited there for her ANBU escort to the Hokage's office. She only waited a few minutes, surprised that Sarutobi was awake and at work this early. It had just passed 6 o'clock, and the village as a whole was still asleep. The ANBU took her shoulder, and without another used Shunshin to get himself and her to Hokage Tower. Hokage-sama, escorting Kushina-sama to your office as ordered, he said. With a nod of acknowledgement from Hiruzen, the ANBU vanished. Hiruzen's eyes hardened as they focused on Kushina. He asked coldly, what business brings you here, Uzumaki-san? Hokage-sama, Kushina greeted him formally with a humble bow, surprising the man. I have realized how badly I messed up when I abandoned my baby boy all those years ago. I'm asking. She got to her knees and bent her hands and head to the floor. No, sir, I'm begging you, please let me see my Naruto-chan so I can bring him home. A growl from Sarutobi's throat caused Kushina to lift her head. Despite the tears that were beginning to fall down Kushina's face, the Hokage's eyes remained steadfast in their iciness. After what you pulled, both that night and the year afterwards, you expect me to suddenly believe you've seen the light and now want to make up for your mistakes. I understand your doubts, Hokage-sama. I don't blame you for having them. But Jiraiya showed me the seal Minato put on Naruto, he made me study it in depth, and I could see that there's no chance of the demon taking over. Please, Hokage-sama, let me bring him home, or at least let me bring my daughters back here so that we can live together in the village with him. No, Uzumaki-san. I can't do that. More to the point, I won't do that, he said. She flinched at his tone then became desperate. Please give me back my son, I'm begging you. Please, Hiruzen. He glared at her when she used his name, but she didn't stop. I need him just as much as he needs me. Please, I'm begging on my knees here. Believe me when I say I love my son, she said in tears. He sighed, rubbing his temples as his will wavered. Even if I do believe you, Uzumaki-san, it's not that simple. He has experienced some rather traumatic incidents in his life recently, and I can't in good conscience burden him with the truth of your abandonment. It could break him completely in the condition he's in right now. No, Uzumaki-san, I won't let you anywhere near him, for his own safety. I pleaded to you before you left and again for a year in letters that he needs his mother, but you refused to hear of it. Why should your pleas move me now? The truth is that I'm not sure if I even want to let him know you exist before it's time for me to reveal his heritage to him and fulfill my promise to Minato, he said, and she looked at him, her tears falling even harder now. What do you mean by traumatic incidents? Tell me. What happened to my son? She asked, and his eyes hardened. What happened to him is the direct result of your abandonment of him and leaving him here. Now, I've heard and said enough. This conversation is over. Leave, Uzumaki-san, our business is concluded. Torai, Nico, he said as she tried to plead more, but he released the privacy seals and flared his chakra as two ANBU came in the room kneeling. Escort Uzumaki-san to the gates and send her on her way, he ordered the two. Before he or the ANBU could act, however, Kushina stood on her feet, planted herself into the floor using 4 chakra chains with several more flailing through the air around her defensively, and flooded the room with extraordinarily powerful killing intent, causing the ANBU to retch and even making the Hokage sweat a bit. Hiruzen Sarutobi, I will not be dismissed so easily and casually. If you want to send me to Ibiki Marino when we're done here, then I'll go white out resisting, but I'm not leaving or moving from this spot until you've given me the time I deserve for making this trip, do you understand me? Kushina shrieked out at him at the top of her lungs through tears of anguish and frustration, shocking him with her furious determination. Hiruzen used some of his own killing intent to match the pressure Kushina was exerting with hers. He stood to his feet and glared at her with determination that was just as unyielding as hers. Studying her, and seeing that nothing he could say or do would persuade her to leave without either giving her what she wanted or putting up a fight that wasn't worth engaging in over a matter of his time, he gave a resigned sigh. Torai, Nico, he addressed his agents, stand down and return to your posts. Sir, are you sure? Torai asked his commander in an even tone, though his doubts as to his Kage's safety could be heard in his question. I promise you that I will not attack him and I don't mean him any harm, Kushina tried to assure the two ANBU in the room, her tears beginning to lessen. I'm sure, Tori, Sarutobi answered the ANBU's question, you may stand down. Both Tori and Nico nodded, saluted their Hokage, and vanished from sight. Sarutobi returned to his seat as well and clasped his hands together in front of him. You may also stand down, Kushina, she sniffled as he used her first name for the first time in 4 years. I will hear you out, but surely you must know that I cannot allow you to have custody of Naruto. Kushina grit her teeth together in anguish, her tears beginning to renew themselves. She allowed her chakra chains to dissolve and recede back into her body. She once again fell to her knees and bowed her head and hands to the floor. Please, Hiruzen, Kushina pleaded, tell me what to do. I know you don't trust me and you think I'm an evil monster, and you're more than justified to feel that way considering all I've done. But tell me what I can do to earn back your trust. Tell me what I can do to show you that I've changed, that I truly do understand my sins and atrocities and that I want to atone for them and redeem myself. Please. Her last plea was yelled out as her voice broke through her sobs once again, tell me what I have to do to get my son back so that he doesn't have to have suffer anymore. Despite the anger and animosity Hiruzen felt towards the woman who was currently kneeling prostrate before him now, he could deny that she was genuine and sincere in the desires she expressed. Could he maybe give her a test of sorts? Could he not give her the benefit of the doubt right now? But at the same, could he afford to? And how would this affect poor Naruto? Kushina, please lift your head, Hiruzen requested in a conciliatory tone. When she had done so, he gestured with his hand, palm face up, to get off her knees and stand before him. When she rose to her full height, Hiruzen began, Kushina, you're putting me in a very difficult position, here. She nodded to show she understood as he continued, one that doesn't have a simple, easy answer. I'm sorry, but I can do and tell you nothing more that concerns Naruto. That's unacceptable. Kushina interrupted him, I won't leave this spot until I at least have more than I came here with. If you want me gone, you have to give me something. And why should I give you anything at all, Uzumaki-san? Hiruzen demanded testily. I get that you can't allow me to take Naruto, and I know and understand why. But can I meet him, at least, even if I don't reveal myself to him as his mother? Can I try to start building something, anything, with him at all, even if it's only from a distance? Please, Hiruzen, give me a little hope, here. Kushina said with tears streaming down her face. Sighing, Hiruzen said, let's just say he has had 2 attempts on his life from within the village, and the fact that he fought of an enemy Jonin who was about to kidnap the Uchiha and Hyuga heiresses. During the fight he activated his chakra chains and managed to knock the Jonin out. Later on, purely by coincidence, he learnt the fact that you were his mother and about everything that happened on the day of the Kyuubi attack. Reaching to this point he stopped speaking in favor of having a breather. Kushina, as she heard Hiruzen speak, felt her heart sinking, and she waited a while before asking how did he react. Pretty much as you'd expect him to. The look of pure betrayal in his eyes still haunts me. I gave him Minato's letters in which he explained the reasons he did what he did. Naruto calmed down a lot after that, and then for the very first time in his life smiled a genuine smile, before he promised to me that he'd make his old man proud by becoming Hokage himself. He idolizes his father more than anything. Now what I am going to say may hurt you. I asked him what he would do if you ever came apologizing. He simply said that he didn't care anymore about what others do. He said he'd respect as a senior shinobi, but nothing more than that. I am sorry, said Hiruzen. Hearing that, Kushina felt her heart break even more. A whole new wave of self-loathing and disappointment hit her. She had lost her son. After a few minutes she slowly whispered, can you tell me about him? Let's just say he is a sad boy with no friends. He tries his hardest to see the best in people. He is a natural-born censor, and not to mention that he is a literal carbon copy of Minato. Not just in terms of looks but also in terms of genius. Can you imagine that he learned how to read at 2 and by 4 he was already reading chakra theory and was practicing control using theory in books? Also he seems to take both nin and fuin jutsu like a sponge. If I am not mistaken he should already be halfway through level 1. That's all you need to know, said Hiruzen. I understand. Can I at least send him gifts and letters? Kushina asked as her voice cracked. No. That would create more problems for the future. Though I would like to ask to give us your notes on the chains. He needs to train them as well, said Hiruzen, to which Kushina readily nodded. Can I see him? Kushina asked in a very short voice. Only from afar, said Hiruzen as he took out his lacrima, and both of them watched as Naruto cooked and then went to sleep. After a few minutes Kushina looked at Hiruzen with tears streaming down once again and said, please Hiruzen, tell me, is there any way for me to get my baby back? I know I haven't been the best mother, but I really want to make amends. Only time will tell. Now I think you should return to the capital. It won't be long before your daughters notice your absence, said Hiruzen as Kushina nodded and left with an ANBU. Kushina sped back home, wishing she could have brought Naruto with her, but grateful for what concessions Hiruzen had made to her. The old man did as he had promised, allowing Kushina her first glimpse of her near 6-year-old son, and as it should have been on the night he was born, she immediately fell in love. Just seeing him and watching him as he read, studied, and cooked for himself brought her to tears once more. How she longed to go down into that apartment and sweep him up into her arms. How she yearned to hug him and kiss him all over his face, telling him how truly sorry she was and how much she loved him. How she ached to bring him home with her and surround him with the love of his family. It was not to be, as Hiruzen brought her back down to reality by ending her time in Konoha and personally escorting her to the gates to see her off. She had returned to the fire capital by late afternoon, and had now entered the Uzumaki estate. As soon as she entered, Jiraiya came up to greet her, but saw a tear-stained face, and no little boy in hand, though she had a sad yet hopeful smile. He could see that while she hadn't gotten what she wanted, she'd been able to walk away with Hiruzen having given her something. She washed her face, put on a smile for her girls whom Jiraiya had brought to greet their mother and welcome her home, and began to cook dinner for her family, thankful for her loved ones, but wishing she could be cooking for her son as well. Jiraiya knew better than to press the issue, and the girls were just as clueless as they ever were, something she found herself to be quite thankful for at the moment. It was the next morning, before the girls were to be woken up for breakfast, that Jiraiya come to Kushina and asked about her meeting with the Hokage. She explained everything that took place to him, about Hiruzen's refusal to allow her near Naruto, about the attempt on Naruto's life, which caused Jiraiya to flinch, though the things Hiruzen asked her to keep to herself, she did. She also told him about laying eyes on him for the first time since his birth, and what she was going to do for Naruto from that day forward. When she was done, Jiraiya asked her, "Kushina, when are you going to tell the girls about him? And what exactly are you going to tell them?" "I'll tell them when I think they're ready," she answered plainly, "and I'll tell them everything. I won't leave anything out." "Are you sure that's wise?" Jiraiya asked warily. "I mean, you don't know how they'll respond to what you have to confess to them. They deserve to know. How they'll react to me isn't what's important. But I have faith in them to take it all in stride." "Well, okay then. If that's what you want to do, I won't stop you when the time comes. Just be careful, okay?" She smiled sadly at him and nodded. Before she prepared breakfast. Flashback end. Kushina continued packing the kitchen as she reminisced over her time spent there, time where she missed Naruto's childhood, but smiling at the things she had learned of him through Hiruzen's continued correspondence. She thought about her frustration with the girls' training over the years, and she couldn't help but compare it to the sheer euphoria of learning about the things she could teach to Naruto when she got the chance. Sadly, the joy she felt at the idea of teaching Naruto was sometimes tainted by news of Naruto being attacked once again, especially on his 6th birthday. Flashback. Fire Capital. Jiraiya and Kushina had been training the twins for a year now, and it became more and more apparent that they took more after their mother than their father, something that now both scared Kushina and made her feel ashamed. She began to fear that they would react to Naruto the same way she had, just following their impulses and not taking the time to really think things through. Her fear was compounded by the fact that neither of the girls was as intelligent as she was, and they were also a good bit more impulsive. She had tried to teach them about battle strategies and deceptions in the shinobi world, but they lacked the attention span to learn such subtleties. They were both headstrong, beat em up first and ask questions later types like she used to be. They had also inherited her fiery temper and brash personality, along with the dense chakra that she had. But while their chakra was quite dense, their chakra control was beyond abysmal, a dilemma she couldn't understand. It wasn't surprising for Jinchuriki to have poor chakra control due to their reserves, but their control was almost negligible, and nothing that Jiraiya and Kushina tried could seem to improve their control. In addition to their dense chakra, the mixing of the Kyuubi's yin and yang chakra respectively into their coils brought problems of their own. The control needed to keep the demonic chakra from bursting forth unrestrained wasn't there due to the absence of the 1,000-year-old soul that was sealed within their brother, which was needed to filter and regulate such potent, dangerous chakra that did not belong to them. Kushina and Jiraiya had tried to teach them any chakra control exercise they knew, even the ones that they thought were more advanced than those their age should be practicing. The leaf exercise, surface sticking, water walking, nothing worked, and all that their efforts showed were leaves ripped to shreds, potholes on walls and trees, and a lot of waterlogged clothes. The girls had no apparent concept of the word restraint, and their short tempers didn't help them either. Needless to say, Kushina knew it was going to be a long and tedious path to get them to master even the basics. She and Jiraiya began to take a different approach, and started training them in her clan's style of taijutsu, the Uzumaki's swirling fist, which relied on the weakening of an opponent first through the use of seals or other long-ranged attacks, such as water-style ninjutsu or her adamantine chains, and then going in for the kill. It was based on strength and force, designed to take down an opponent by going on the offensive and landing fierce strikes. The downside was that the swirling fist had almost nothing in the way of defensive techniques, which was the style's greatest weakness. For most Uzumaki, however, this weakness was negligible, as their skill in sealing is what provided the defense that they needed. And therein lay another crucial problem. She had tried to teach the girls sealing, but it just didn't take. Neither of them had the patience needed to learn the subtleties of the complex art, nor to develop the necessary skill in calligraphy. What was worse was that neither of them had inherited the Uzumaki clan's natural talent for the art. They didn't care, it wasn't flashy enough for their tastes, something that once again saddened Kushina to no end. She had tried to convince them how powerful seals were and had showed them some, but the only ones they were interested in were exploding tags and storage seals, and even these were difficult for them to follow or understand. Kushina spent the day where she realized they wouldn't progress beyond those two basics in virtual mourning. Jiraiya had started to teach them basic ninjutsu and was their personal taijutsu sparring partner. He himself had no particular taijutsu style, being a bit of a brawler himself, except for the frog kumite taught to him by the toads, which was now useless to him due to his eviction from the Toad clan and his loss of sage mode. He had taken bits and pieces from many of the styles Hiruzen tried to teach him in his younger days and crammed them all together in a style that worked for him. The only advantage he had was that he was very unpredictable, though any taijutsu master would likely tear him to shreds, and a user who had experience fighting his style would give him a very hard time. Kushina had not given up on reaching out to Naruto through Hiruzen, sending letters to Hiruzen on an almost weekly basis, asking for any news on Naruto he was willing to impart upon her, whilst occasionally asking him to reconsider allowing her to meet Naruto and bring him home. His answer was always no, but the more often they corresponded, the more cordial Hiruzen's letters became, and the more hopeful she felt. She had learned that almost all of the clans of Konoha had attacked Naruto at one point or another, only the Uchiha had not. She would have to express her gratitude to the Uchiha clan properly when she returned to Konoha. The other clans? She would be paying their leaders personal visits, and she would be out for blood. The rest of the letter was of a much more positive nature. Naruto had encountered seals recently, and was completely and utterly fascinated by them. Already, he was practicing calligraphy, and he could even make working explosive tags and storage seals. And he was only 6 years old. He had inherited both hers and Minato's talents for sealing. Oh, how she couldn't stand waiting to be able to teach him everything she knew. She was also told of his first week at the academy. It was rough for him, as most of the children there had been told by their parents that he was a worthless clanless loser who had been abandoned by both his parents. This made her very, very angry, and she resolved to pay a few parents of Naruto's classmates several personal visits once she was back in Konoha. She was sure that she could get a list of Naruto's old classmates after he graduated. And if any of those parents were the same clan's folk that she would be visiting already, then they wouldn't escape her with their lives. She however was glad when she learned of the friends he made. It made sure that he wouldn't be alone and had several people standing up for him. Flashback end. As Kushina was preparing for summoning the slug that would take them to Konoha, she began to reflect on how the girls had progressed in their training over the years. The basics had to be drilled into them constantly, as they were both rather slow learners. She was not surprised, however, when she saw their affinity towards chakra-intensive ninjutsu, both of them having a decent number of techniques in their repertoire. They were both highly proficient in the fundamental techniques of the swirling fist, but the advanced katas were still beyond their current abilities. True mastery of the style is something they would never have due to their lack of desire and ability to learn the sealing arts, but Kushina would at least make sure that they could use the style to a sufficient degree of proficiency to be able to take on any non-Uzumaki adversary. Her thoughts took a tangent back to Naruto for a brief moment. She looked forward to teaching him the swirling fist, as unlike the girls, Naruto could attain full mastery of it if his skills in sealing were to be believed. She could only hope that maybe seeing Naruto master the style to a degree that they could not might impress upon the girls that sealing is a skill worth taking the time to learn, as a true master of the swirling fist could stand toe-to-toe with any ninjutsu user without using any ninjutsu of their own. The swirling fist was indeed that fearsome when used the way it was intended. Kushina grew nervous about returning to Konoha and introducing Naruto to his family. The girls had known about their brother since they were 7 years old, and thankfully they forgave their mother once she had admitted everything. Both of them had cried over the fact that they never knew their brother, but they believed Kushina when she told them she was doing literally everything she could in order to bring Naruto home to be with them. Every single picture that was sent by Hiruzen, she would show the girls and Jiraiya. While Jiraiya never seemed too impressed with him, the girls couldn't help but gush over their brother as though he was the greatest boy ever born. Narumi even had Kushina make copies of his most recent pictures for her. Kushina smiled and giggled as she thought about the crush that Narumi had developed on her brother in the last couple of years when she would catch her fawning over those pictures and blushing when she didn't think her mother was looking. She didn't doubt their love for their brother, but what concerned her was their pride bordering on arrogance due to having everything handed to them freely. She knew that Naruto knew no such privilege, and should the girls say the wrong thing to him, it could have disastrous consequences, and possibly destroy their chances of building any kind of family connection with their brother. Naruto had suffered, he had suffered beyond what any human being should ever have to suffer, and certainly more than anyone else ever had the right to inflict upon him. All the girls had ever really suffered as children was a bit of bullying at the park. They were 7 years old. Kushina had brought the girls to the park, as she would typically do to reward them after a long week of training. After she left their sight for a little while, some older children of relatives of the daimyo had cornered them in a secluded part of the park, backing them up against the trees as all of them laughed at their terrified expressions. They started to belittle them, saying they weren't princesses, and that their hair made them look like tomatoes. One of them started pulling on Narumi's hair, causing her to cry out and whimper in fear and pain. Mito stood up for her, but was trembling in fear, unable to get them to stop. When their mother came for them, all the boys ran off. Kushina held her girls to her as they cried into her chest. Suddenly Narumi lamented that other than her and Mito, she had no one to protect her if they weren't there, causing her to cry harder. But then Kushina told them that they had their brother to rely on back in the village and that he was really strong. Narumi had stopped crying and smiled as she imagined her big brother saving her and gently leading her back home. Mito wasn't sure if her brother would ever risk his life for them and promised herself that she would get stronger to protect herself and Narumi if something like that ever happened. She too wished that her brother would save her, but wanted to be strong enough not to rely on anyone, and Narumi promised Kushina that she would get stronger for protecting herself and show her brother that she too was strong. Mito's strength and skill were higher than Narumi's and they were the strongest in the capital their age, which again had caused Mito to become quite arrogant, and Narumi only less so, though she still retained her bubbly personality unlike Mito, who thought herself above everyone. Kushina could only hope that the girls would learn humility soon enough, and that it wouldn't have to be a painful lesson as it was often wont to be. She let her thoughts drift off as she laid down to sleep. Tomorrow would be a big day, and she couldn't see any ending that wouldn't be difficult or painful, so they would all need all the energy they could get. They had were no inside the slug which was moving at high speeds. Jiraiya going on ahead to report in and prepare Hiruzen for their arrival. When they were a few miles out, Kushina and the girls stepped out from the slug and took to the road, moving at a more casual pace. So, Ka-chan, Narumi asked with a blush on her face, what do you think Naruto and Ai-chan will be like? Do you think he'll like me? Kushina giggled at Narumi's implied question, though she answered it fairly, Narumi-chan, I think Naru-chan is going to love a bubbly and pretty little sister like you. You too, Mito-chan. Her face and voice became somber as she continued, it's how he'll react to me that I'm worried about. Mito tried to encourage her mother with a determined grin, don't worry Ka-chan. Naruto and I is bound to forgive you with how much you love him now. And if he doesn't, then I'll beat him black and blue until he does. Kushina suddenly turned on Mito in anger, her hair rising and flailing like 9 tails of fury, you'll do no such thing, do you understand me? Both Mito and Narumi were quite taken aback at this. Rarely had their mother been angry with them, and never had it been to this degree. Kushina explained herself, girls, listen to me. Naruto has been through a lot in his life. He has suffered things that the two of you couldn't even begin to understand, and he has suffered them all his life. He hasn't been treated well by the village at all, which is actually why I've been fighting so hard to bring him home over the years. I don't expect him to welcome us warmly at all. In fact, I'm preparing myself for the worst, and if he does end up blowing up or even attacking me, I will not retaliate or respond in a negative manner. And neither will the two of you, understand? Mito, don't you even joke about something like that ever again. Both of the girls just looked back and forth between their mother and each other, not knowing what to say. The rest of their trip was made in silence, the mood somber and oppressive. Kushina's fears as they approached Konoha's gates only became more pronounced, even to the point where the girls seemed to catch them as well, lumps rising in both of their throats as they became nervous about what might happen upon meeting their brother in a couple of hours. Soon the wait was over and Irika entered the room along with Mizuki. After silencing the class, Irika said, "We will be having 2 more students joining us for the test today. Before any one of you complains about unfairness, they were trained outside the village and have returned to take part in the exams." His announcement caused mixed reactions, groans from the heirs, and looks of curiosity from the civilians. Naruto though kept an impassive face on. Irika motioned towards the door and 2 red-headed girls with cute round faces entered the room and respectively said, "Hello, my name is Mito/Narumi Uzumaki, pleased to meet you." Silence followed in the room. Naruto, however, being the genius he is, connected the dots and understood that they were his sisters. He then remembered what his father had asked him to and vowed that he would protect. Soon, however, the whole class burst out laughing and Kiba shouted, "Ha ha 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 ha, who would have thought that our new classmates would be a pair of tomatoes?" Mito looked indignant at the comparison, whereas Narumi looked downcast. However, all laughing ceased to be when the room was filled with a very potent killing intent. Everyone, including the teachers and the new girls, were finding it hard to breathe. After a moment Naruto spoke, his voice eerily calm. "If you're done making a fool out of yourself, I would advise you to stop harassing our new classmates. Or else," said Naruto, emphasizing on else with a fresh burst of even greater killing intent, making all of his classmates gulp in fear before nodding. Naruto then stopped emitting his ki and gave Narumi and Mito a warm smile before saying, "Welcome to Konoha, I hope to get along with you as well." Both girls dumbly nodded and moved to sit on the seats behind Naruto, both of them having different sets of thoughts. Naruto-Nisan is so cool. We are only able to produce that much ki in our tailed states, thought Narumi. He stood up for us. Even though he could have hated us. I hope he forgives us after we talk, thought Mito. Thank you for that, Naruto. So class, let's begin our final exams. I hope all of you pass, said Irika as he and Mizuki starts distributing the question paper. Upon looking at his paper, Naruto sighed and thought, as I expected. They'd give me questions that even some elite shunins would be hard-pressed to answer them. Oh well, let's see what I can do. I am only aiming for the middle seat. After an hour, Irika stopped the test and collected the papers before sending them for marking. He then motioned the class to follow him for their target practice. They were to throw 10 shurikens and 10 kunai to practice dummies. The passing marks were 4 out of 10 for shurikens and 6 out of 10 for kunai. Naruto though decided that he would go all out for this test. There was no way he was going to underplay his shuriken jutsu. It was then that Irika started calling out names. Most of the civilian kids failed except for a pink-haired girl, Sakura Haruno. The remainder of the heirs, including those from Naruto's group, were a different story. Kiba, Sayuri, Hinata all got 9 out of 10 in both kunai and shurikens, and all 3 wore smug faces. Mito and Narumi both had scored 8 out of 10 in both of the categories. Aizen had 7 out of 10 in shurikens and 8 out of 10 in kunai. Yakumo and Shino both had the same. The lowest among the heirs were Ino Shikamaru and Choji, who had gotten barely enough to pass. Naruto Uzumaki, called Irika. As Naruto made his way to the positioning line, Sayuri smirked and said, "Try beating our score, dope." Naruto paid her no mind, which caused her to frown and then return to her brooding. She had started brooding ever since Shisui Uchiha had murdered his whole clan, leaving only Itachi, who later killed him, Mikoto, and Sayuri. She was brooding because she was the one who wanted to kill Shisui and now had made it her life's goal to beat her brother and become clan head. Standing on the line, Naruto looked at Irika and said, "Sensei, I will be throwing both my shuriken and kunai together. Also I will be using one of each for all 10 targets." Everyone's eyes widened at the claim, but no one voiced the surprise because the previous pulse of killing intent was still fresh in their minds. Irika looked on for a few moments before slowly nodding. Naruto lazily took out a kunai and a shuriken before lazy flicking them both at the same time with a twitch of his wrist. He then made a one-handed ram sign which caused both the projectiles to multiply by 10 and then go on to hit all 20 targets. This caused the whole class to drop their jaws, who would have expected an average student to be so skilled in shuriken jutsu. As he was walking back to his seat he looked and subtly smirked at Sayuri, Kiba and Hinata, causing all three of them to seethe at him. Hinata then shouted, "How dare you mock us, you peasant, we are above you. In terms of clan and status maybe, in terms of skill definitely not. Also why don't you put your skill where your mouth is Naruto mockingly replied before returning to his seat. His friends excitedly congratulated him and Narumi and Mito smiled at him, which he returned in kind, causing both of them to blush a little. Though Narumi's blush was much more noticeable. Soon after there were taijutsu matches. Narumi and Mito both tied, same for Shikamaru and Choji, both of who quit because they didn't want to fight each other. Hinata and Sayuri both beat random civilians. Ino and Sakura tied after a styleless cat fight-like brawl. Shino, Aizen, Yakumo all beat their civilian opponents almost flawlessly, passing with flying colors. Next and the final match was Kiba vs Naruto. So Dobe, are you ready to give up? If you grovel and beg for mercy I will finish you off painlessly. Kiba said in a smug voice. Naruto just looked at him blankly before saying, "You said something." Causing everyone to face fault and Kiba to shake in fury. Whereas in the Hokage office where all available Jonin senseis were watching, a silver-haired masked Jonin wiped of an imaginary tear and said they grow up so fast. Whereas an other wearing a green spandex with gigantic eyebrows shouted about the young boy's flames of youth have been corrupted and need to be saved. To which the silver-haired Jonin said, "You say something, guy." It caused the green Jonin to cry anime tears at his eternal rival's hip-like attitude. Back to the fight, Kiba rushed in as soon as the fight was signaled to start. Naruto however just stood in his starting spot, not even moving from it. All the while deflecting of Kiba's attacks and getting in occasional blows. Kiba was getting increasingly frustrated as the fight went on. How was he the rookie of the year being outdone by a clan-less orphan? He then shouted as he went in for another attack, "Damn you, why can't I hit you?" As soon as he thrust his fist forward, Naruto caught before in one swift motion, slinging Kiba out of the ring and signaling the end of the match. Naruto then answered, "That was because you were in the eye of the hurricane." Saying that, he turned around and went back to his seat. At the Jonin lounge everyone was surprised by the blondes, however two Jonins had very serious looks on their faces. Performing one of the advanced katas of the hummingbird style was no easy feat, specifically the one which was made for multiple opponents. The next stage of ninjutsu went without incident, with nearly everyone passing and becoming ninjas. After collecting his headband, Naruto left. His friends weren't able to follow him because of their families. Whereas Mito and Narumi were stopped by Mizuki for some reason. Kiba was named Rookie of the Year despite having been beaten by Naruto. The Kunoichi of the Year award was shared by both Hinata and Sayuri, mainly because both were way too prideful to admit defeat, and thus avoiding unnecessary problem. As Naruto was walking, Mizuki walked up to him and gave him a smile which immediately made Naruto put his guard up. Mizuki was never kind to him, he was planning a trap here and somehow Naruto was in the middle of it. "I'm sorry that we couldn't crown you as the Rookie of the Year. Kiba had better overall grades than you," Mizuki said to Naruto with an apologetic smile. "Me no harm done, I did pass after all," replied Naruto with a lazy wave of his hand. His answer caught Mizuki off guard as he asked, "Meaning you don't care whether you are Rookie of the Year or not because you simply passed the test?" "Exactly. Now if that will be all, I'll be going now, sensei," said Naruto as he shushened away, leaving Mizuki to seethe as he thought the whole plan has failed. Well, at least we get to kill 2 of the 3 demons. We'll just get this one later. Mizuki then smirked before running off in the opposite direction. He was unknowingly being followed by Naruto, who after suspected him of trying something evil. Scene break *. In a forest near the village, both Mito and Narumi entered a clearing and started waiting for their sensei. "Are you sure we should be here, Mito?" Narumi nervously asked. "Yeah, if we pass the test then we will be crowned as the Kunoichi of the Year. Don't you want to make Mum and Nissen proud?" Mito asked her twin, who reluctantly nodded. Suddenly a couple of senbon hit both the girls on the back of their necks and they felt the control on their bodies leaving them. And they fell unconscious. Suddenly 4 people came out of the bushes and started sneering at them. Well, Mizuki, who would have thought your plan would work so well? Now we can rid Konoha of its demons and we will then be seen as heroes. Said one of them. I have a better idea, Aoba, how about playing with them for a little while? We are alone and a little release won't hurt anyone. Said the third figure of the group. However, before any one of them could even move, 12 chains erupted from the ground and formed a dome-like structure around both the unconscious girls. The 4 men did not have time to react as 3 of them were hit by multiple shuriken before they could react and fell down on the floor unconscious. The only one left awake was Mizuki, and he frantically looked around before spotting Naruto on one of the branches. What are you doing here, demon? How dare you interrupt your attempt at cleansing Konoha? Naruto didn't answer him and said, is that enough evidence for you, Weasel-san? As he asked that, an ANBU appeared behind Mizuki and knocked him out. He nodded at Naruto, who created shadow clones and took Mito and Narumi with him. Leaving the ANBU to deal with the traitors. Making his way to his apartment, he set both Narumi and Mito on his beds and waited for them to wake up. Knowing the special Uzumaki healing traits, they would be awake after 2 hours at most. And exact to prediction, both girls woke up after 2 hours and frantically looked around before spotting each other. They then slowly got up and cautiously made way outside, trying to find out where were they. Soon they spotted a familiar figure in the form of their brother as he was making some coffee. Good, you are awake, sit down by the table, the coffee is almost ready. Said Naruto with his back still turned. Both girls visibly relaxed and went to sit down. After a few minutes of silence, Mito spoke up and said, Nissen, if you only wanted to talk to us, why did you kidnap us? Naruto burst out laughing at that, causing Mito to grow red with embarrassment. After Naruto stopped laughing, he handed both the girls their coffee before affectionately ruffling their heads and saying, I didn't kidnap you guys. Those were just some bad men who were jealous of you and wanted to harm you. But your Nissen took care of it and brought you to his place. Currently your attackers are being withheld by ANBU. Both the girls connected the dots and understood that had Naruto not appeared when he had, the girls would have lost more than their lives. Both of them looked down, not meeting his eyes. Sensing a depressing aura, he said, hey, what's with the long faces? You finally meet your brother, you should tell me about your lives and your training. With a look of disbelief, both looked up and saw him smiling before they started regaling their tales of training. As they were talking, Naruto started cooking dinner and soon they were eating. After they had finished talking, Naruto said, I have already informed both the Hokage and Kushina-sama about what happened and they are currently investigating the whole setup. You can stay here for tonight or go to your place, it's up to you. We would like to stay, Nissen. Said Narumi with Mito nodding along. Alright, then go take a shower and go to the rooms you got up in. I will lend you some clothes for the night. Said as he got up and left. Mom was right, Mito, Nissen will save us from trouble. Said Narumi. Yeah, she was, but I was thinking, if Nissen is saving us, then who will save Nissen? Asked Mito. Leaving this to thought, both took their showers and reached their rooms. Soon, however, they found themselves unable to sleep because of what happened earlier. Both made their way to Naruto's room and knocked on the door before entering. They saw Naruto sitting on his bed reading a book. Seeing them enter, he closed the book and looked at them before asking, scared of closing your eyes in fear of what happened today? Both of them nodded. Sighing, Naruto motioned them to come on his bed. Mito to his left and Narumi to his right. He then said, listen, I am here for you, I will protect you, get some sleep, you have to go home tomorrow. Okay. Both nodded before Narumi asked, Nissen, will you come with us? Naruto shook his head and said, both of you are seen as heroes by the majority of the population here. Me, on the other hand, am the village pariah. It would be better if we kept our distance. Today was an exception. Now get some sleep. He finished with a tone of finality, causing both the girls to nod and then snuggle into him, drifting to sleep. Naruto sighed to himself. After spending time with his sisters, he wanted nothing more than to be close to them. They had several weird quirks that he found cute. He guessed he'd have to talk to Gigi about this. Smiling, Naruto picked up his book and started reading it again. Elsewhere looking through a lacrima were Hiruzen, Jiraiya, Kushina, Itachi, and Kakashi. All of them were smiling at the scene before them. "See Kushina, I told you he won't hold anything against them," said Jiraiya. "Hi, I am really happy that my babies are finally connecting with each other after my horrid error," said Kushina with a sad smile. "Now we have to deal with who teaches Naruto. The council will make sure that he remains without a team because of the uneven Genin numbers. They decide Kakashi to train the Uchiha and Kushina to stay with her daughters. There is no setup that fits with Naruto getting a team," said Hiruzen with a sigh. Before anyone could speak, Itachi coughed and said, "Hokage-sama, I would like to take Naruto as my apprentice. I have fulfilled all the requirements to be a Jonin and I am S-ranked. The council can't force me to do anything because I am the clan head. So there shouldn't be any problems." Hiruzen smiled and said, "You were planning for this, weren't you?" "I may have been or I may not have been," Itachi replied with a very small smile. "Very well then Itachi, I will leave Naruto to you. Good luck," said Hiruzen as everyone except Kushina left. "I know what you are thinking, Kushina. Give him some time to come into terms with everything. He has always wanted a family and he is internally confused. Give him some time and be there if he ever needs you. Who knows, he goes part the respect and sees you like family again," said Hiruzen, to which Kushina nodded and left. The next day, after dropping both of the girls to the Uzumaki estate, he made his way to his Gigi's office to get his registration photo in. Making his way after having a friendly greeting with the secretary, Naruto entered the office by kicking the door open and shouted, "Gigi, I did it, I passed, and here is the photo for the shinobi registration." Hiruzen chuckled at the blonde. It still surprised him how someone could be so serious when the situation demanded it and on the next moment be as relaxed and carefree as Andrea Pirlo on the football field. "Okay Naruto, come here and show me the picture," said the Hiruzen as Naruto handed him the picture. In the pic he tried to pull off one of Minato's signature glares. And he almost got it right as well. Soon however the door burst open. A small kid around the age of 5 ran into the room with a wooden kunai shouting, "I have you now." However, before he could throw the kunai he tripped over his own scarf and fell down. Looking up from the floor he pointed at Naruto and shouted, "You tripped me." Naruto gave him a blank look before he burst out laughing. He then said, "Oh, haven't had a laugh like that in a long time. Kid, you tripped on your own scarf. You should stop wearing it until you become older. Don't lie, just admit you did it." The kid shouted. Naruto went up to the kid and picked him up, saying, "Listen up and listen hard, brat. Instead of blaming others, try training to get better. Because as you are now you won't last a minute against me, let alone someone like Gigi." "Hey, he is my Gigi," Konohamaru shouted. Yeah, I am stronger than you, so he automatically becomes my Gigi," said Naruto with a smirk. After a few minutes a Jonin wearing sunglasses appeared and shouted, "Let honored grandson go, you fiend." Yeah, I am not even interested in the squirt," said Naruto as he let Konohamaru go before bonking him on the head. Naruto then turned to Hiruzen and said, "Najiji, let's go get some ramen, we haven't eaten together in ages." "Ah, I wish I could go, Naruto, but with the new genin my paperwork is on an all-time high," Hiruzen replied with a sigh. "Well, you could always use shadow clones for the paperwork. Everything they read will be transferred to you," Naruto said in a matter-of-fact tone. Hiruzen stared at Naruto for a few moments before standing up and glomming Naruto. Thank you. You just helped me defeat the bane of all Kages. Take that, Anoki, rot in hell while I enjoy." Ahahahahahahaha. Hiruzen finished with a maniacal laugh, causing Naruto and the others to sweat drop at the shinobi no Kami's antics. Elsewhere in the land of rock and the land of the lightning, 2 Kages sneezed at the same time. Damn, Hiruzen/old monkey must have found the answer to paperwork. Damn him. I will ask him during the upcoming Chunin exams, thought both of the Kages. Anyways, Gigi, let's go for some ramen tomorrow, okay? Said Naruto, to which Hiruzen nodded with a smile. Turning to Konohamaru he said, "See ya later, squirt," before he disappeared into a leaf shushin. "Najiji, who was that?" Konohamaru asked. I think he is arguable the strongest genin in all of the elemental nations." "Naruto," said Hiruzen. Looking at Konohamaru's interest, the Jonin said you shouldn't associate yourself with that fiend-honored grandson. If one is to become a Hokage, he must learn over 1,000 jutsus, and Ebisu the elite trainer can give you a shortcut to becoming a Hokage. He then looked around and saw that Konohamaru was nowhere to be found. He then looked at Hiruzen, who had an amused smile on his face, and asked, where did the honored grandson go, Hokage-sama? I think he went to find Naruto. He seems to have taken a liking to the boy. Replied Hiruzen. Time skip 1 week, asterisk. All the academy graduates were sitting and waiting for Iruka to appear with the teams. Over the week both Mito and Narumi had been unveiled as clan heirs, which was people were currently looking at them with looks of respect and were trying to befriend them. Naruto was sitting quietly next to Shino, both of them not willing to break the silence around them. Soon Iruka appeared with the teams and started off with his speech on their duties to the leaf. His speech was ignored by most genin because they considered it to be boring. Alright, now for the teams. Team 1 to 5 random unimportant civilians. Team 6 Sayuri Uchiha, Kiba Inazaka and Sakura Haruno. Ignoring the shout of love conquers all, your Jonin sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Team 7 Narumi Uzumaki, Mito Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga, your Jonin sensei will be Kushina Uzumaki. Team 8 Shino Aburame, Yakumo Kurama, and Aizen Sarutobi, your Jonin sensei will be Kurinai Yuhi. Team 9 is still in circulation. Team 10 Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, and Ino Yamanaka, your Jonin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Team 11 will be a two-man cell. Naruto Uzumaki, you will be the apprentice of Itachi Uchiha. Naruto gave a real smile at being able to train with one of his precious people, whereas Sayuri just growled in annoyance. Why would an Uchiha train a clan-less loser, she thought. Your sensei will be here in an hour. You may do anything you like in said hour. Iruka finished before leaving. Naruto sighed before taking out a deck of cards. He looked around the class and said, anyone wanna play? An hour later, when all the senseis including Kakashi, who had been dragged by Kushina, arrived, they saw all of the genin gambling, and by the looks of it Naruto was winning a lot. Gur, you have to be cheating. Kiba shouted in frustration as he pointed a finger at Naruto. Naruto just innocently smiled at him and said, you say something, Kiba? Causing everyone to once again face fault and all the Jonin to snicker. It was then they decided to reveal themselves. Team 6, come with me. Kakashi ordered. Team 7, follow me to ground 7. Kushina stated. Team 8, after me please. Said Kurinai. Team 10, to the restaurant. Said Asuma. Once all of them were gone, Naruto waited for a while with his eyes closed before saying, you can come out now, Nissan. It seems you are getting better with your sensing. You were able to sense me even though I was just masking half of my power. Said Itachi as he stepped out of the shadows. Ah, come on Nissan, you know the ability is not completely mastered. You should cut your favorite sibling some slack. Naruto said with a pout. Ho, and what gave you the idea that you are my favorite sibling? Itachi asked with an amused expression. 3 reasons actually. 1, I have a completely developed Sharingan that I am not dependent on. 2, I don't have a 7-foot stick up my ass unlike your other sibling. 3, I am just way too awesome to not be your favorite. Naruto replied with a foxy grin. Itachi chuckled and ruffled Naruto's hair before saying, you've got that right, let's go. Naruto jumped up from his seat and followed Itachi as they left towards a dango stand. After reaching the stand and ordering their food, Itachi sat down on a table and said, now I know all about your style and skills, Naruto-kun, so I won't waste time in testing your abilities. And I also have a fair idea of what to teach you, but I want to know if you plan on learning anything apart of what you are currently doing. Hi Nissan. I was thinking of improving my taijutsu repertoire. I have the hummingbird, which involves speed and accurate but not that powerful attacks. I was thinking of adding a defensive style along with a direct style that uses powerful hits. After that I think it's high time I start my elemental manipulation. With genjutsu it's only high-level ones that I can learn. And finally I am having mixed thoughts about starting kenjutsu. Fuinjutsu will be carry on in the pace it is going. Naruto replied. That is indeed a very well thought out plan, Naruto-kun. I think it would be best that you get scrolls for Toad style because it is among the best defensive taijutsu styles available. For a direct one I think Goken will suit you, or we could utilize your Sharingan and have you learn the Interceptor Fist. We will start elemental manipulation as I was already planning on it. I think Kenjutsu will be good for you considering the fact that your mother is currently the best Kenjutsu practitioner in the world. Said Itachi. She is not my mother Nissen. I am in no way related to Lady Kushina. I agree with your other suggestions. So when do we begin? Naruto asked in a very stiff tone. Itachi sighed inwardly. One of the reasons he had taken Naruto as his student was to get him to realize that holding on to the past brought nothing but sorrow, but it seems like he had his work cut out for him. He couldn't blame Naruto. Naruto resented both his mother, his godfather, and not to mention the entire village bar a few people. Heck, Itachi knew the only reason he had become a leaf shinobi was because of his father. He had his work cut out for him. We shall begin tomorrow morning in training ground 43. It is seldom used by others and would be a good area to let loose. Said Itachi, to which Naruto nodded. Naruto soon developed a mischievous glint in his eyes which immediately caused Itachi to go on the defensive. With a smirk on his face Naruto says, "So Niizan, have you finally asked I am Nei-chan out, did you?" This question caught Itachi off guard and he stuttered out refusals. Sighing, Naruto shook his head and said, "You know Nissen, you should ask her out already. Nearly everyone in the village knows that you are infatuated with each other." Itachi then sighed and said, "It's not that simple, you know. I may be an S-rank ninja with a moniker of Konoha's Raven, but I am still a love-struck teenager. I get very shy just thinking about her. How am I supposed to ask her out?" "Well, Nikon, it seems like you need my help. After training tomorrow we are going to be discussing you asking Nei-chan out," said Naruto. "Ho, and how will you help me?" asked Itachi. "You are looking at someone who has read nearly every romance novel in Konoha. I can offer a lot of advice," Naruto sagely said. Both nodded to each other and began eating in silence, making occasional small talk. Team 6 star. "Alright team, let's get on with the introductions," said Kakashi as he stared at the genin in front of him. "Why do you go first, sensei?" said Sakura. Sighing, Kakashi said, "My name is Kakashi Hitaki. I have many likes, some dislikes. My dream for the future. You are way too young to know. Now you pinky," said Kakashi. "My name is Sakura Haruno. I like blushes and looks at Kiba. My dreams are looks at Kiba again with a slight nosebleed. My dislikes are Ino Buta and Naruto Baka for what he did to Kiba-kun," said Sakura. "Great, just what I wanted, a fangirl," thought Kakashi. "Now you dog breath, asterisk," said Kakashi pointing at Kiba. Grumbling at the nickname Kiba, said, "My name is Kiba Inazaka. My likes include training with my partner Akamaru and learning new jutsus. My dislikes include girls who don't listen to my advances and that dope Naruto. My dream for the future is to become the best Inazaka clan head in history." "That's interesting, a pervert with a decent dream," thought Kakashi before pointing at Sayuri and saying, "Your turn, sunshine." "Hn. My name is Sayuri Uchiha. My likes are tomatoes and training. My dislikes are my brother because of his attitude and Naruto just because he is how he is. My dream is to beat my brother and become the clan head and lead the clan back to its previous glory," Sayuri said in a monotone voice. So all three have a common standing in hating Naruto. Interesting, thought Kakashi. Clapping his hands he said, "Well, all those are good goals and dreams. Now all of you go home and come back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp for the genin test. Oh, they are gonna flip soon," he finished as he smirked in his mind. "What do you mean by test, sensei? We already passed the academy test," Sakura said, her voice laced with confusion. "Oh, the academy just narrows down people who can take the real test. In the test tomorrow normally 66% of the genin fail and are sent to the reserves. Oh, just so you know, I have never passed a team before. Now off you go and remember not to have breakfast or else you will throw up," said Kakashi before he disappeared into a puff of smoke, leaving behind three confused genin. With Team 7 asterisk. "Alright team, let's begin with introductions. I will go first. My name is Kushina Uzumaki, my like are my family, my dislikes are people who harm my family, and my dream is to one day reconcile with my son who I have wronged in the worst possible way. Kushina said, her voice losing its happy edge as she finished speaking. Mito and Narumi both gave familiar intros, and then finally it was Hinata's turn. She merely scoffed and said, my name is Hinata Hyuga, I am the heiress of the Hyuga clan. My likes include training and putting people in their place. My dislikes include the caged bird seal and some other things. My dream is to become a good clan head and find an answer to the caged bird seal. Alright, then we will meet here tomorrow for the start of our missions and training. Now I want you to know that being your sensei there will be no secrets between us. If you have anything on your minds tell me and I will help you in any and every way I can. Now off you go, I need to report to the Hokage," said Kushina before leaving the trio. Hinata wasted no time and left the red-headed twins. Both the sisters then drugged before deciding to visit Naruto. Canon for Team 8 and 10. About their tests and whatnot. I am not gonna write about them. Making their way through the village, both the girls received many greetings and looks of respect. Honestly, they enjoyed basking in the attention. Turning around the corner, they spotted Itachi casually walking and eating a Pocky stick. Running up to him, Mito shouted, "Itachi-sensei, have you seen Naruto Nikon anywhere?" Itachi gave an unnoticeable smile and said he went over to train near his house after we did the test. He said he had just completed a jutsu and was now going to test it at full power. If you both go, no, you may just see it in action. Both the girls excitedly nodded before rushing up to Naruto, leaving a chuckling Itachi behind. I wonder how they'll react seeing his very own spiral release. Itachi before he went on his merry way. Soon the girls reached Naruto's personal training ground and saw him throw a ball of pure chakra before creating a ram sign and shouting spiral release, spiraling Senbon rain. As he called the name, the chakra ball spread before exploding, sending countless Senbon made of pure chakra into the surroundings. You can come out now, Mito, Narumi, said Naruto, and both the girls sheepishly stepped out. So what can I do for you? Asked Naruto as Ge picked up his jacket and wore it. We came to see you, Nikon. But what was that jutsu? And why did you call it spiral release? Narumi asked with a tilt of her head. Chuckling, Naruto patted her head and said that my dearest Amuto was one of my alternate versions of Rasengan. I am sure you both know what that is, right? Asked Naruto, getting a nod from both of the twins. Have you learned it yet? Asked Naruto, to which both girls shook their heads and said we were focusing on elemental jutsu since controlling the Kyuubi's chakra is a pain in the ass. Ow wow. Mito yelped as Naruto bonked her on the head and said, no using foul language in front of me, missy. Am I understood? Hi, Nikon. Mito meekly replied while blushing from embarrassment. Well, back to your original question, I based several moves based of Rasengan, so I decide to name it as a whole style on its own. So far I have created some 15 jutsus for my very own spiral release. All of them require very, and I mean very good chakra control, said Naruto. As he explained, both girls had developed looks of admiration on their faces. Soon Narumi gave him the puppy dog look and said, Nikon, please show me another jutsu of your spiral release. Mito gave him the same look and nodded along with Narumi. Looking at them, Naruto felt his defenses crumbling down before he sighed and nodded. Turning around, he brought his hand up and said, spiral release, Gudama Rasengan. A giant spiraling ball appeared in his hands before it disappeared. He smirked at their dumb expressions before turning around and going to his home. Both the girls were brought out of their stupor and quickly ran after him. Watching from the trees was one of Danzo's operatives. He decided to go and inform his master of the new development. However, before he could leave, he felt a sword sticking out of his chest. Gasping and then coughing out blood, he turned and saw Itachi standing there with a smirk on his face. I can't have you revealing my students' secrets now, can I? He rhetorically asked before twisting and removing the sword. He then took the body and disappeared into the pre-evening sky.